Welcome to the podcast. I am Jeremy.
I'm Austin Butler.
Very nice.
That's
Very
all I got.
Elvisy.
That's all I got.
Hey, you know what? I'll take it. And if you want to break it back out as we go, that's, more than welcome.
I might.
We-
I'm still
we like
trying
to-
to perfect it.
Yeah, we like to embrace the weird on here,
Oh yeah, for sure.
So just a couple of housekeeping things for those of you wanting to keep up with us and our podcast here, the Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies podcast. We are trying to branch out and be more involved in social media. So now you can find Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies on there's a Facebook page, Instagram account, Twitter account. We're even on Threads.
Oh,
Are we on TikTok? No, we're not on TikTok. Because
No.
I'm going to be honest, I just aged out of TikTok. I don't know how to use
Yeah.
TikTok. And TikTok for social media is like Disney live action remakes for movies. There's just somewhere you have to draw the line. And young people, you may not know this yet, but there'll be a point where you're just like, I've had enough technology. I'm not learning something new. And that's
Yeah.
TikTok for me.
yeah. Hey, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, so but the other ones, like I said, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies is the handle, and you
Yeah.
can follow us, and we'll post clips on there and things like that. And we want it to be interactive. It's
Yeah.
a way for people to hopefully respond. So follow us and interact with us.
Please, we love the interaction.
Yeah. All right. So this week we're going to be doing the thing that we love most,
Yeah.
and it's been a little bit since we've got to do. We're going to talk about a new release movie.
Yeah.
And this week we are talking about the Bikeriders.
We really
So-
wanted to talk about two new releases, but we found out the
did.
hard way that Kinds of Kindness is, I think it's like only in LA and it's in the big cities right now, not to us small town folk yet.
Yeah, it really they teased us and they fooled
did.
us,
They did.
which was not a kind of kindness, I got to say. So Yorgos,
Come on, Yorgos.
you owe me an apology, bud.
Exactly. I was mentally prepared to knock out two movies and just didn't happen. So
Yeah,
I did, however,
and
can I tell you a story real
Yeah.
quick? I did, however,
absolutely.
I did go to see Bikeriders on Friday night. Sat down in the theater, sat through 30 minutes of previews and commercials, only for Bad Boys Ride or Die to come on. And I was not in the wrong theater. They started playing Bad Boys Ride or Die, and someone quickly went and told them they were playing the wrong movie. And so then we sat in the dark for like 10 minutes until finally a manager came in and said that they just couldn't get Bikeriders to work. So we got free passes to come back the next day. So it just felt like I was, I thought I was going to see two movies. I didn't. Then I thought for a second I wasn't even going to see the one movie I still thought I could see, but I powered through and made it. So
Well, I'm glad that it worked out. I'm glad you were able to see it.
yeah.
I saw Bikeriders on Thursday afternoon, which is about as early as you can see a new release movie. So went with my dad and watched it. And I felt like I got to use my expertise because we were talking about like, oh, when do we need to leave? And I was like, it's a 2:00 movie. I was like, Dad, we don't need to leave before 1:45. It's going to take us 20 minutes to get to the theater. I was like, well, plenty of time. We got in there 15 minutes after 2, and we're still sitting through previews. And my dad was like, you're right. We did not have to get here early. And I was like, yeah, I told you.
The previews and commercials before movies is getting ridiculous. 30 minutes. And I am, this is from a guy who loves movies, and I still don't want to see 30 minutes of previews. And I also don't need to see Nicole Kidman telling me to go to the movies when all she does is prestige TV anymore.
It's very true. There's like 3 straight AMC special videos before they start. But I have learned, you learn little tricks of the trade when you go a lot. I've learned as soon as they start the first AMC thing, I still have time to go do a last-second bathroom break and get back before the movie actually starts.
Yeah.
So,
That is the
a lot
nice
of time-
thing. That is the nice thing about going to a lot of movies. You learn your timing and you learn what you can do and what you have time for. So, and I will say, like, I've been to a lot of movies this year and I've never had a problem until Friday. So no hard feelings to our local AMC theater. It happens. They took care of it.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little about the Bikeriders.
Yeah.
So the Bikeriders is based on a true story.
Mm-hmm.
and it's based on a journalist spent time with this biker gang, the Vandals,
Mm-hmm.
from I think it was the late '60s. I'm not going to remember the exact year, something like '67 through like
So many,
'71
yeah.
that he tracked these guys,
Mm-hmm.
and it's told mainly through the framework of our main character really is Jodie Comer's
Yeah.
character, um,
Yep.
and she plays a character. I'm blanking on her name. I think it's Kathy. Is that her
Yeah.
name?
That
Yeah,
seems right.
Kathy. And Kathy is doing a lot of the interviewing with this journalist to explain the history of this gang and how the gang function and who everybody is. So she's really our
Mm-hmm.
into this world. But then Tom Hardy plays Johnny, who's the president, the founder of this gang, and then Austin Butler plays Benny, who is just he's the love interest of Kathy. He's her introduction to the world. He also is just playing the cool guy in the
Yeah.
group. That's
Yeah.
essentially all you could say about Benny. He's playing the cool guy.
He is.
Yeah. So the movie is written and directed by Jeff Nichols. Jeff Nichols is somebody I wasn't super familiar with his work. In fact,
Yeah. Same.
looking at his IMDb, he writes and directs his own stuff. Mud, starring Matthew McConaughey, was the only one of his movies that I've actually seen, but I
Yeah.
really like Mud. So I was like,
Same.
okay, all right, that's a if I've only seen one and it's one that I like, that's a good background, I guess.
Sure.
Reason for confidence. I did read in the trivia that this is the type of movie he's been wanting to make for a while. He'd been talking for a long time about making some kind of motorcycle movie,
Mm-hmm.
and he's worked with Michael Shannon a bunch. And Michael Shannon's in this movie, and apparently
Yeah.
Michael Shannon told him the last movie they were doing together, and Jeff Nichols was talking about it. Michael Shannon said, "Man, you are never going to make that movie. You've been talking about it for a decade."
Yeah. I saw
And then
all that.
he stumbled across this one, and this became the movie that Jeff Nichols made. So, what were your thoughts going into this movie, Andy? What were you expecting to get when you went to go see the Bikeriders?
So, the appeal to me, I'm like you, I wasn't overly familiar with the director, so that wasn't the big draw. I think really the appeal to me was the Tom Hardy Austin Butler combination. And, I didn't know a lot about this movie. It was originally supposed to release back, I think, what was it, December? So
Yeah,
during one of
December of
my,
last year.
yeah, so during something I saw a preview for it and thought, this looks pretty interesting. And like I said, Tom Hardy and Austin Butler. And I'm always suckered in and drawn into the appeal of like I get to visit a world, like a world, especially one that I'm not familiar with. It's like, okay, this could be really interesting to spend some time and kind of see like the rise and fall of a biker gang. And that was kind of the appeal to me. And like truthfully, if we weren't in a little bit of a lull right now in like original content to review, I probably wouldn't have been quite as excited about it. I just want to be honest right up front. This was not like, man, I am counting the days till Bikeriders. This is one of my most anticipated movies of the year. It's not to say I was down on seeing it at all. I wanted to see it, but it just, it didn't break into that like I wasn't looking forward to this like I was looking forward to like a Furiosa or something like that.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
It I'm the same way. Like this was not a movie that I was really amped to see. It's more like it could be interesting. There's some
Mm-hmm.
people in it I like.
Yeah.
It's got a cool sort of aesthetic. I mean, biker gangs always look cool
Cool. Yeah.
in movies, and so I was wanted to see what they would do with it. It didn't seem to have a lot of hype opening,
No.
and that made me wonder. I was like, okay, it really had me like going in, kind of like I want to see why this isn't seeming like a bigger deal. There must be something odd about this movie or something different. It's not what people would expect or something. And then I just gotta say, I don't think this is spoilery, that it was actually exactly the movie that I expected it to be.
Mm-hmm.
It played out like, and so like I left surprised that the movie hasn't been maybe bigger or better, more celebrated.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's that sort of, it's got a broad appeal,
Mm-hmm.
right? It doesn't do anything too weird or too strange or too intense that everybody couldn't access this movie.
Right.
And one of my notes that I wrote was this movie in its sort of its premise and even its setup, it feels like it should have been a Scorsese movie.
Okay, I'm so glad you said that, and I'm gonna reserve some comments for a little bit later.
Okay, so yeah, we'll say that. But I just said it feels like it should be a Scorsese movie, but it's done by a filmmaker who does things with a lot more reserve.
Yes,
Um, and so as
reserve
I'm
is
watching
not
it,
one of Scorsese's strong points.
right, and I'll just say this: I think it's probably a good thing that Scorsese didn't make this because Scorsese's already made great gang movies, and
Yeah,
we didn't need another one. And maybe I think it's probably a challenge for anybody making a gang movie to go, okay, I got to make a gang movie, and Scorsese set the standard. How do I make something that's good but clearly distinct from what Scorsese's done?
mm-hmm.
Uh, Obviously you don't want to go too far the other way because there's a reason why Scorsese's things work, and you don't
Right.
want to get away from those. But yeah, I imagine it's got to be in a filmmaker's head. If I'm making any sort of gang movie, it's going to be, well, what did what did Scorsese already do? What would he do? How do I make this different?
Yeah, I mean, he's the gold standard for this type of material.
Yeah, but uh, and then going back to even just the setup, the whole like it's not quite narration throughout, but it basically might as well be because of Kathy's
Because of
explaining
Kathy.
everything. So I'm like Kathy's explaining to the journalist is basically the equivalent to in Goodfellas
Scorsese's
all the
narration.
narration by what's his name, the main
Ray,
character,
Ray Liotta.
Ray Liotta. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways, and of course, it's a pretty common setup of starting at the end of the time period and then just going back and
Looking
forth and
backwards. Yeah.
explaining and doing it that way. I did with those movies. I always wonder. One of the first questions I ask is, did this need to be nonlinear like that? Would it
Mm-hmm.
have made any difference if we just started at the beginning and just went linear storytelling through? And this is one I'm like, I don't think it was hurt by being nonlinear. I don't think it was necessarily helped by being nonlinear.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It didn't. Yeah. I don't think it made a big difference one way or another.
And only a nerd like me would think this. I would love to see a cut where they just take it and they just put it all together, lay it out like start to finish, and then maybe I'd watch it and go, yeah, that didn't work as well. It's a good thing they did it the
It,
other way.
it could be.
Yeah, but there's movies you watch and you go, well, that had to be nonlinear. We talked about
Oh,
this with
absolutely.
Oppenheimer last year, where it was like if you just did Oppenheimer, it would feel like a really unbalanced movie.
Yeah. We thought.
You had to have the jumps back and forth to have the right build and
Yep.
climax and all of that and pacing. I don't know if this was any sort of issue with that stuff. I think it was just like, this is how we're going to frame it. Our end of the world is how the journalist documented it, and he documented it through a lot of interviews and then eyewitness
Yeah.
stuff. So, yeah. All right. I guess we haven't really said, we'll get to the part that we usually build to, and it may not be as clear with this one, how we felt about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Although I guess the answer is, and the fact that's not very clear, I really enjoyed this movie. I did not love this movie.
Okay.
I think I wrote down this movie as a B for me, which is like firmly in the like good but not great category. How did you feel about it?
I would probably go D plus C minus.
Oh,
I
okay.
was.
Wow.
Yeah. I was. And that's why I'm being kind of quiet. I was just kind of holding for the moment. I was very disappointed with this movie.
Okay. Well,
And
no,
I could.
I'm good because I said I wanted to see why is this movie not going to be a bigger deal, and now you're going to help explain to me because whatever it is that you have an issue with or made you not like it, I bet is what is making this movie just not work for most people.
Yeah, and whenever
So
you want me to, I'll go.
please, absolutely, jump into it right now.
Okay, so I'm going to say a couple things to set this up. I immediately, like you did, clocked kind of the Scorsese. This is like a Scorsese type story. And then when the movie started, I got major Scorsese vibes because it kind of starts. You're just kind of in the middle of a scene. It's just Austin Butler in a bar. He gets in a fight, so you got your violence, not Scorsese violence, but violence. And then Austin Butler is getting ready to get. Spoiler alerts, by the way. Austin Butler is getting ready to get whacked in the back of the head with a shovel. Freeze frame, title card. I think some music kicks in. So it's like right off the bat, this feels very Scorsese. And that's fine. If you're going to rip something off, like I said, Scorsese's he's the golden standard for the rise and fall or thrust you into a world and all this stuff. So I was thinking, okay, maybe this is going to have like the energy of a Goodfellas. Now, I also want to say it's very unfair to compare any movie to Goodfellas. Goodfellas is probably one of the three greatest movies ever made, in my opinion. It's not a fact, but so it's not even like I was comparing this to Goodfellas. What this movie lacked for me. Okay, so I'm going to say Goodfellas a lot. Think about Goodfellas with me. You are put into that world, and that feels like a world that is just oozing out of Scorsese's pores, like a world that he knows and that he understands so well. And he does such an unbelievable job of immersing you in that world. You think about like Goodfellas, I think Casino is another example. It's like you feel like you are so in that world with them. Like Goodfellas, you feel like you can smell the cigarette smoke when those guys are all sitting around playing cards and doing the thing and all the stuff they're doing. You feel like you can feel that money they have in their hand just because you are so in that world. I felt so distant from this world in the whole movie. I never felt like I was getting an understanding of what this world was. And I think to tell a story like this, you need to feel like you are in that world and you have an understanding of that world. Like in Goodfellas, you understand even kind of like the totem pole or the hierarchy. Like, okay, this is the top gangster, Paul Sorvino's character. Robert De Niro's character is right there below him. Liotta and Pesci are kind of lower on the totem pole. You just got such a great understanding of that world. You got a great understanding of the time period. Like Scorsese's the master of using, music and different things to put you in that time period. And I thought this movie just really failed to bring me into this world and to give me any kind of understanding other than the very basics. Like this is a motorcycle gang and Tom Hardy's the president. But I just felt so disconnected from this world the whole movie. Sorry for the long ramble there.
No, it's totally fine. I probably everything you said is fair. And I should say that this movie and my enjoyment of it probably did benefit from low expectations. I think
Mm-hmm.
if I had been really excited and been like, this is going to be such a cool, fun, like gangster movie, I would have been let down. And I think it
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
benefited from not being that. Um, yeah, I don't know that I don't have any rebuttal. That's for sure. I'm not going to come back and say, oh, you're wrong. This world felt really lived in. In fact, one of my biggest notes was, I get why the setup was what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Why our introduction to the world was Kathy. She's supposed to be like more of the normal person, and so she's giving you a more normal person's view of the
Yep.
gang that's going on and all that. At the same time, my note was this was an hour and 56-minute long movie. It felt every bit of 2.5 hours, and my
Mm-hmm.
complaint was we spent too much time with Kathy. I
Yeah.
really, it's like this movie would have been a lot better if we just would have spent a lot more time with the guys. That's when the movie was at its best, is when
Yep.
you're just hanging out with the guys, with the biker gang,
Mm-hmm.
and the way they talk and interact. That was the best stuff. Um, the Benny and Kathy stuff, I never felt really connected or drawn into that.
Yeah, I thought they did just a really poor job. Like you understand like her appeal, like why she's drawn to him. He's a nice looking dude. He's kind of the bad boy. You get that, but they just really never play. It just kind of has that throwaway line of like, yeah, 5 weeks later we got married, and then you just like anytime you do see them, they're both just kind of sitting there, and it's like, hey, I don't want you to ride anymore. Don't ask me not to ride. And there just wasn't a lot of interesting things going on between them. And again, not to, like I said, it's totally unfair to compare anything to Goodfellas, but even like the Ray Liotta, Lorraine Bracco, Henry Karen marriage, like you see them and they have chemistry together and you can see why they're drawn to each other, but you could also see why she's repulsed by him at times. And I just didn't feel anything. Like a lot of the movie was like, yeah, I think one of these days he might just leave, of Bikeriders, I mean. And you're just kind of like, okay, so if he leaves, like I don't care one way or another. I was never ever invested in them at all.
No. So one of my questions going into the movie was, and we've talked about this before. There's two modes to Austin Butler.
Mm-hmm.
I said, are we going to get actor Austin Butler in this movie, or are we going to get movie star Austin Butler in this
Mm-hmm.
movie? This is 100% a movie star Austin Butler performance.
Yeah.
You could just tell they were like, you look the part. Here's what we need. Never hold your head up straight. It always
Dude.
needs to be slightly askew. and I want
Yes.
your eyes to never be fully open,
Dude,
and I
I
never
know.
want you to fully enunciate. You're gonna say like 10 words in the whole movie, and you're just always gonna look like this,
Yeah.
and I just want you that, and that's your appeal.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't. You're exactly right. He doesn't do anything interesting. Uh, like I said, the whole why did Kathy fall for him is just he's hot. That's it.
Yeah. Like he's
I
a
mean,
good looking dude.
he sits outside of her house like a stalker on his bike for like all night and waits until
Yeah.
her current boyfriend freaks out and leaves, and then he just like walks up and that's it. He sealed the deal by being
That's
handsome.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so like I'll say this too, like I still like Austin Butler. I'm joking around about his voice and stuff. I do like Austin Butler. And I don't think he was bad in this movie. I think he chose a bad role. Like you said, it's
yeah,
like, hey, Austin Butler, you're super handsome and you've obviously got a charisma that shined through when he played Elvis. But it's like you said, in this movie, you always need to have your head tilted or you always need to be looking down, staring at your beer. By all means, don't ever just look up or sit up straight. And I just don't think this part did him any favors at all.
no. And I I remember hearing somebody say, I think it might have been my dad, but he might have just been saying what he had heard somewhere else about Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt is a character actor stuck in a leading man's body.
Mm-hmm.
Brad Pitt never wanted to be like just cast because of my good look stuff. He always wanted to do interesting things and make interesting choices. But he
Mm-hmm.
is Brad Pitt. He looks like Brad Pitt. So a lot of times people are like, we just need you to go be handsome, Brad
Yeah.
Pitt. And I think Austin Butler has that same issue. Austin Butler I think is more than happy to play supporting roles, to do weird things, to be in
Yeah.
Dune 2 where he's unrecognizable.
Right.
I think Austin Butler would love to just do that. But he also looks like Austin Butler. And people are
Yeah.
going to be like, hey, we're going to pay you a lot of money just to come look great on a motorcycle. You in? And he's like, yeah, I guess, I could, even if it's just the do one for them so you can do one for you type thing,
Mm-hmm.
he's going to cash in on that every once in a while. And this was I'm just going to show up and be a movie star.
Yeah, and I really don't fault him for that. I really don't. I get it, but it just feel like man, there's got to be a more movie star part out there for you instead of just like what are his character traits? Like I guess like he's only happy when he's on his bike and stuff, but they never really explored any of that, and I don't know. It just I was
Yeah,
like I said, just definitely let down. And again, I still like Austin Butler. I think he's going to be around. He's a star. He's got the look of a star. I just don't think this role did him any favors.
I agree. Um, I do think it's not just his part. I think a lot of the stuff
Oh
was
no,
not
yeah,
very well written.
agreed.
That was, again, I saw it with my dad, and one of our conversations going out is this is one of those movies where people would not have just normal conversations. We talked about in The Sixth Sense, the great conversation between the son and the mom in the car. We
Mm-hmm.
were like, please just say what normal people would say, make the
Yes.
case the way normal, and the kid does, and you're like, oh, thank goodness. Movies usually don't do that.
Yeah.
This is one of those movies where
Yeah.
every argument they had, I'm like, none of you are saying what normal people would say
It's just
in these circumstances.
it's a movie argument.
Yeah, none of you are like the very obvious argument that anybody would make. You're not making,
Mm-hmm.
and even stuff like there's the scene where Johnny and Benny, that's Tom Hardy and Austin Butler, go to visit Cockroach, the guy who wants out,
Yeah.
and it's building up like they're gonna go execute Cockroach, and then it turns out they break in, and it's a setup to make it look like somebody broke in and shot Cockroach, but
Mm-hmm.
didn't kill him, just enough so he can get out.
Right.
And Johnny doesn't tell Benny, so Benny doesn't know what's happening, and that's the audience's view through, so we don't know what's happening. And you get done, and you're like, 100% Johnny would have told Benny. You
Yeah.
got to make sure nothing, like, no mix-up happens. What if Benny just
Shoot
breaks into
you.
the door and shoots him? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, there's no reason for him not to say the plan, other than the movie is more suspenseful when you don't know that that's the plan, that's what's going to happen. And so stuff like that, you just can't do a lot of that in a movie without, at a certain point, people are like, this just isn't reality.
Yeah.
For a
And-
movie that's supposed to be based in reality.
And then that's another scene where Austin Butler, because of the scenario that you just described, he's kind of stuck just standing there. And I'm not saying that Austin Butler, the actor, always has to be doing something flashy in a movie, but this, kind of leans into what I'm saying, where it's like this part didn't do him any favors, where you're like, so you kind of just have to stand here like a doofus because you guys don't talk or communicate like normal human beings do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's we've kind of just been going in the negative, so I'm just going to go through my negative notes, which we've covered mostly. The other thing I said is uh, that just not a lot really happens in this movie in general,
It doesn't.
which is why I think what should have happened in this movie was a lot more. What I said, it's at its best when the guys are just hanging out.
Yeah.
It almost needed to be like an edgier Dazed and Confused,
Hmm.
like just hang out with these guys having fun, because that's really what the movie was about, was how these guys were just it it's a biker gang movie, but before they really became a biker gang,
Yeah.
like they were just friends hanging out, and like they still pushed the boundaries for sure at times and did illegal things sometimes, but not like, as it says in the epilogue, they eventually became like the drug dealing, murdering, like all that stuff
Hmm.
level gang. And that's where I go like, okay, if Scorsese had made this movie, he probably starts the movie when the kid takes over, and then because he would want
Goes.
to cover when it really goes off the rails.
Oh yeah. He
And this
wants.
one, yeah, this one was like, we want to start and talk about how it was pretty tame actually,
Hmm.
and it was actually like good guys involved in it. It was more about loyalty and like guys finding a place to fit in and all of that. And then it devolved later into this as it just grew too big and the wrong people took over.
Yeah.
Um,
So that was another one of my
yeah,
big problems with this movie. I don't care that it didn't go the Scorsese route and do like the rise and then the big time fall where everyone's drugged out of their minds and there's murders and stuff. That's fine if it didn't do that. So it didn't lean into that aspect of it, but it also didn't do a good job of just showing you, like you said, just the hey, we're just a bunch of guys who hang out. Like I was never like it was missing a couple of scenes I felt like of just like, man, I really get so like Austin Butler's whole thing is like I would literally rather just my marriage fall apart than I would give up bike riding. But they didn't have the scenes in there that showed why he loves the bike riding so much or being a part of this gang so much. So it didn't turn into like the violent Scorsese, downfall. Okay, that's fine. But it also didn't show like the fun, the camaraderie, the brotherhood. It didn't. So therefore, like I saw this with my dad, like you saw it with your dad, and I told him on the way home, I go, it just kind of felt like a big pile of nothing. Like, and that's what I mean. Like, it didn't lean into the brotherhood that much, but it didn't lean into the downfall and the violence that much either. I mean, there is violence. Don't get me wrong, and you do see the like. I get the message and I get the point of what happened in the movie. Like these young guys came and took over, and they just kind of took it away from the old guard, and it's not what it used to be. But I just don't feel like it leaned into any of that stuff enough, and it just therefore left you with just kind of boy, that was just a lot of Austin Butler sulking around at a bar, and Jodie Comer is that her name? Jodie Comer.
yeah,
A lot of Jodie Comer just smoking cigarettes and talking to a reporter, and none of those things are very interesting. In the midst of all this stuff that would have been interesting, and it also just didn't. It didn't do a good job of like, man, motor. Like if Scorsese would have directed this, he would have had some great shots and great camera work and stuff like that that shows like, man, these bikes are cool and like these bikes mean something to these people, and they didn't do that either. So I hate, I don't like being negative, but it's just like I said, it just all kind of seemed like a big pile of nothing to me.
okay. Um, yeah. Again, I'm not even gonna say you're wrong, and
No,
I'm listening to you and I'm going like it, not just to say because you're talking me out of it or anything, but like listening to your argument, I'm like, yeah, maybe a B is too high for this movie because I agree with everything that you say.
I mean,
Um,
one thing we both want to do on here is be honest about how we feel about these movies. So I am just trying to be honest. Now, I do want to throw in real quick, so I'm not fully negative. I, I I am not for a second. This is not like Madam Web level. I'm not even saying this. Like this is a competently made movie with good actors in it. So please don't hear me say this. And I'm not saying this is like worst movie of the year. I'm not saying that at all. It was just kind of a dud more than anything to me.
yeah. Um, so I've got three categories I wrote, like parts I liked, neutral, and then the bad. And we've covered most of the bad, so I'm going to
Okay.
work my way back. The neutral. Um, there's that storyline that they go to throughout the movie with the kid. That's all he's called, is the kid. It's the kid
Mm-hmm.
who's obviously kind of a bad seed, and he
Right.
we first see him, he sees the gang, and you can tell he's intrigued, and then he wants to join the gang, and he gets rejected, and then he eventually gets in, and in the end, again, spoilers, he's the one who kills Johnny and takes over the gang.
Right.
All of that is very standard stuff, and you could see it coming a mile away. If you're a moviegoer, like the first time they showed him, I said, that kid is killing one of our two main characters.
Oh, 100%.
You just see it. And then every build-up just made it more and more clear that by the end, when he challenges Johnny and they choose knives, I mean, they were telegraphing that so hard with the conversations Johnny was having, the looks he was giving. I was like, this dude's about to die. And like, not just because we're late in the movie and something big has to happen, just everything was very, very apparent, I guess I would say. And again, didn't bother me so much because it is just sort of like everything about this movie was very traditional. I thought this felt like a very traditional movie, and that was a very traditional thing. Here's your, we're planting the seed, and we're gonna like let it grow into the thing that eventually happens, and it just happened. So I called that neutral because it's like I'm not gonna go well done, but it also just a bad thing. It just obvious.
I agree completely, and once again, felt like they were missing a couple of scenes of really showing, the kid. Like, man, this is a bad dude. Like, I think this is a movie that honestly could have benefited from some more violence and showing, like, man, like, all it is this kid, like, hey, I want to be in this gang. Like, and I'm not saying I needed 30 minutes of backstory on this guy, but it's like, why does he want to be in the gang? Why is he a bad dude? I guess they kind of show you, like, lives in, like, an abusive home, but I agree with you. It wasn't awful. It wasn't very well done. It was just kind of there.
Yeah. And then some of the stuff that I thought was good. So there's two fight scenes that I love the results of both the fight scenes. So the one is Tom Hardy being challenged by the one guy, the bigger redheaded guy, and it's all over. The bigger redheaded guy wants to have a new chapter of their gang open in, I think, Milwaukee or something like that. And Tom Hardy says no at first, so the guy challenges. So they go out and they fight. Tom Hardy fights dirty and wins because the guy's bigger than him. And then after he wins, he goes, tell them they can have their chapter. Yeah. And it's just kind of a cool move to be like, I just couldn't give in. And once I fought you and beat you, I can let you have what you want, but I think I made a point. Yeah. About my, like, that's the more this, like, I was like, we need more of that.
More of
that
this.
Was a lot of fun.
Agreed completely.
And then the other scene was when the two groups of people fight over, one guy accuses one of their guys of scratching his motorcycle. They're all in each other's faces. It looks like Tom Hardy's actually going to defuse the situation. Then Austin Butler just runs in and punches. It's not that the fight was really great. What I loved was as soon as the fight's over, they're all picking each other up and they go hang out and drink beers and talk together. And I was like, that's the stuff that, like, this is really fun. Like I said, it's almost like Dazed and Confused level of like, we're all here for a good time. And I was having a good time with them.
And that's what I mean when I say they needed, if they weren't going to lean into the downfall and the violence, just give me more stuff like that. Of like, man, we're rough, we're a bunch of rough dudes, but we're also kind of just good guys, and we're all like in this brotherhood together. And they didn't have enough of that kind of stuff. But I agree with you completely. Yeah. Both of those scenes were really fun, and you just didn't get enough of them.
Yep. And then two smaller moments. I guess one's not that small. But the small moment is Funny Sonny, played by, and now I'm blanking on his name, dude from Walking Dead, Norman Reedus. Yes. When they ask why he's there, he came from California to hang out with them, and he says he came for Cal, one of the guys in their crew. He's like, they sent me here because he never turned in his colors back home, and he's riding with you guys now, so they sent me here to work him over, basically. And he's holding the knife and pointing at him, and it's really tense for a minute. And he's like, I'm not going to do that. I like you guys. I'm just going to hang with you guys for a while. Yeah. And when you're watching, you're like, wow, is this about to get weird? Is he about to, like, go stab this guy? And and then it doesn't happen. It's just kind of a funny moment. And I'm like, oh, see, it goes well on what we're saying. All the moments of the guys hanging out and doing stuff like that is fun. And then last thing I'll say is I did enjoy the whole bit of Austin Butler outrunning all the cops and then his motorcycle running out of gas and him just having to sit there out in the country next to his motorcycle, just wait for the cops to catch up and just embrace the fact that he's caught. He's done.
and that's, yeah, exactly. And that's where Austin Butler just shines, and that charisma shines, even though he's not doing a lot, just the way he can pull that stuff off of, like, he kind of has that smirk on his face, like, all right, they got me. And he's not mad or anything. And that stuff is all great. and then it just doesn't really go anywhere, you know. And it's like it's like one step forward, one step backwards. A lot of this stuff was, yeah, that stuff was great, and it's like that's a nice way to kind of get a laugh without having to resort to just stupid comedy, and that stuff was all great. And that was well done too when he was running from the cops and he goes right between those two cars as they're, you know, and then you go like, okay, like, and this is all probably in the first what 10 or 15 minutes of the movie. So I was like, all right, like I'm into this. And then again, I just want to say, like, I'm not saying this is a terrible movie, but just nothing really built to anything or led to anything big. And I wanted to ask you, like, what you thought of Tom Hardy in this movie, because it felt like a little bit of a waste. He has such a unique presence and just a vibe about him. And there was just way too many scenes to me of Tom Hardy just kind of sitting in the restaurant or the bar, just kind of sitting there.
Yeah, I thought it was a good Tom Hardy
I,
performance.
I did too. I think maybe I just wanted more of it or more from it.
Yeah, I think I was just happy. I really went in thinking, I bet the thing that's gonna be weird about this is Tom Hardy's gonna be weird in this movie
Mm-hmm.
because we just know Tom Hardy. He just loves to
He
he
loves.
doesn't love doing anything that's really traditional, like we
Mm-hmm.
said this movie is. But he played this very traditionally. He played just a
He
normal
did.
motorcycle leader, and his voice is always a little weird. I think it's just I've
Always.
had to come to the conclusion that Tom Hardy probably just speaks weird. He's just a weird voiced guy. It, but yeah,
Like
he's got the toughness that you get and the charisma that you get why people follow this dude and they want to be part of his group.
he definitely does, and that's what I think was lacking. Is I just wanted to see, like, I don't need to see like every moment that led to Tom Hardy becoming the president of this biker gang, but he does. He has that toughness to him. Like, you definitely know in real life that dude's a tough guy, and he's got that charisma. And I wanted to just to see a little bit more of it and a little less of him just kind of sitting there. So I don't know. I again, I'm not trying to be negative. Movie just left me disappointed.
Yeah, I think you would probably say that this is true. I think a lot of people are probably disappointed when it finally gets. It starts with that scene, like you said, of Austin Butler sitting in the bar and the guys attacking him, and you know it's going to build back up to the biker
Yep.
gang's revenge. And they show up at the bar, and it's starting to seem like they're acting like really cool and tough, and burn down the bar. And then he just sends off a couple guys and says, go take care of them. And we don't go see that happen.
Yeah.
And I think, again, the Scorsese version we reference a lot. They definitely show that. But I think even as an audience, you're wanting to see where the biker gang starts being a tough biker gang and goes
Yep.
and just you don't even have to show the violence. Just show up and the guy's reaction to like, oh crap,
Yes.
we've really stepped in it now.
Yep.
And we don't get that payoff.
We don't. Just a lot of build up, or seems like it's leading to something, and then it kind of doesn't. I did like the moment though. I love Tom Hardy. Just they're like, "What about the bar? Burn it down!" Like he just said that so casually. So that stuff was good, which is what I'm saying. Like this is not an awful, worst movie of the year, Madam Web type situation, but I just wanted more from it.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what I think. The director Jeff Nichols is, as we said, it's like somebody doing Scorsese, but somebody who's a lot more reserved.
Way too reserved.
Probably Jeff Nichols is probably like, I want to do a very like honest portrait of this biker gang, and it could have used a little more flair to it.
It could have. It could have.
Could have leaned in a little more. He didn't have to go like full Michael Bay or anything.
No.
A little more of something. Either like we've said it over and over again, so we don't need to keep repeating ourselves. You either show more of the toughness of the violence, or you show more of the fun, like guys' camaraderie and all of that.
And they just kind of didn't do either.
Yeah.
Yep.
So one thing I did want to make sure I pointed out is, I said this movie is Jodie Comer's movie. Kathy is the most central character in the movie, or the character we hear from the most, anyways. Like if there's however many lines of dialogue, she's probably got 50% of the lines of dialogue in the movie.
Yeah.
And I actually think Jodie Comer did a great job in this movie.
Agreed.
I think, and for one thing, she definitely did the best job of having a Chicago accent of anybody in the movie. I don't even know if it was accurate necessarily.
She
but
went
she's
for
at least
it,
the
though.
most consistent and did something. Everybody else, like, first off, Austin Butler, I know you could do things with your voice because you became Elvis, but you were just Austin Butler. You had no trace of Midwestern voice. Tom Hardy, I'm like, is this what you think Chicagoans sound like? Is that why maybe he's a little more nasally like some Northerners are?
Tom Hardy just
but he
must
just sounded
have
weird.
a lifetime contract to talk weird in movies.
Yeah, Jodie Comer is the only one who I was like, I don't know if she's nailing it, but at least I get that she's going for that Chicago area like style in the late '60s accent,
Yeah,
and she stuck to it.
she did. She
So
did.
so I really thought she is of all the actors in the movie who I thought were able to showcase something. I thought she had the best performance
I hope
in the
so.
movie.
Or I agree, and I hope for her sake that those were some kind of prop cigarettes she had to smoke, because she's smoking in every scene in this movie. I think
Well, that's most of the characters, I think.
that's true.
But
Not just her, but yeah, everybody. But yeah, no, I thought she was good. I do. She had a lot to do, and you know, the story, like you said, has to be kind of told through her, and yeah, she did it. She did a good job.
yeah. So I just wanted to run through some of the rest of the cast because it does have a pretty like
It's got a good cast.
solid cast of
It
like
does.
people you're like, oh, I know that guy.
Yep,
So Michael Shannon, like I said, is in it. He always plays eccentric characters.
he does.
Like you just know you see Michael Shannon, big old beard, bushy hair,
Oh
and this
my gosh.
motorcycle gang, and you're like, of course. And
Of course.
you make these jokes all the time. You almost get the idea that Michael Shannon's like, I'll be in this movie, but here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna have crazy hair,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm gonna be this, unhinged guy. And
Yeah, and they're just
course-
like,
of course
okay,
you are.
okay, Michael Shannon, that's fine.
Yeah, like he actually showed up on set. They didn't have to put him in wardrobe because
Yeah.
that's just what he was wearing that
Yeah,
day.
that's always my joke I make. Like, they just filmed
Yeah.
Michael Shannon, and then they just spliced him into the movie.
Yeah, Norman Reedus, who I already mentioned, is much
Yeah.
like that.
Yep.
I mean, he was bigger, bushier hair and beard, and then just like some
teeth.
horrible teeth.
Yeah,
And it's always a reminder when you see people with teeth like that in a movie, why movies don't always go like true to time period and give people bad teeth. And it's so distracting.
it's not.
Like
Yeah,
every time he talks, you're like, I don't even know what's going on in the movie. All I can notice is these horrible teeth in his mouth.
it's not pleasing to look at.
Yeah. But Norman Reedus shows up, and you're like, of course, if you made a movie about a motorcycle gang, Norman Reedus had to have a part in it. He just,
Oh, sure.
for whatever reason, he's just that guy. He's that actor. He just fits that
Yep.
so well. Mike Feist or Feist, I actually still don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced. From Challengers, from
Yeah.
West Side Story, plays a reporter in this, and I thought my note next to him was overqualified. It literally could have been anybody in that.
Literally
part.
anybody.
He didn't do anything other than sit and just like hold a microphone like this.
That was a nothing part. I mean, a nothing part.
Yeah, he had. I would say he had one moment that was of any interest, and that's when Michael Shannon's doing this whole big deal about college and
Yeah,
how he hates people who go to college, and he threatened his brother when his brother went to college and made him drop out and all this stuff because real men work with their hands.
Right.
And he's like, so what do you do? He's like, I'm finishing up college for journalism.
Yeah.
But he does it with like this grin, like, that was the only moment where I thought that's the benefit of having a good actor in that part.
It
But
is.
other than that, it literally could have been a cardboard cutout of somebody.
absolutely, it
Could have been a monkey. It may
could.
have been more interesting actually if it was a monkey holding a microphone.
It might have been.
Interviewing. So, don't blame Mike Feist. It's just
It wasn't his fault. No, he's a good actor.
no. And to be fair, like we said, this movie was supposed to come out last December. It was filmed back in 2022. So guys like Austin Butler and Mike Feist, their star has really risen since this movie was filmed.
Yeah.
So as you're sitting there going like, boy, I thought you would choose a meatier part. Maybe they didn't have that choice when they took the part.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
Yeah. Damon Harriman played Brucey in the movie, and I
Uh-huh.
didn't recognize it. Like when I'm watching it, I'm like, I don't know this guy, I don't think. And I thought he did a really good job for his part.
Yeah.
Kind of the right hand man that you just want to kind of likable guy. And when he
Yep.
dies, you got to feel bad that he died. I don't know if you looked this up. He plays Charles Manson in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and the show Mindhunters.
I
was like, oh my gosh, like I would have never guessed that. Of course, he's got
me
like,
neither.
light
Yeah.
strawberry blonde hair and this or whatever, and not the long stringy hair and beard
Right.
he had in his brief moment in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But
Right.
uh,
No, that's crazy.
was-
I didn't even look at that.
yeah, for whatever reason, I just get excited when I see like, oh yeah, he was in something that I like.
Yep.
So
That's always exciting.
similarly, you have the two guys that are kind of goofballs in the group, Wahoo and Corky.
Yeah.
Wahoo was played by Bo Knapp or something like that. He was in The Nice Guys, is what I knew him
Yeah.
from.
Yep.
Guy who gets blue ink sprayed on his face
Yep.
early in it and then has it on the rest of the time. And then Corky's played by Carl Glusman, and I wouldn't have known him for anything. Looked it up, and I was like, oh, he has a brief moment in the movie Civil War.
Yes.
He's the guy when they come across the house of the sniper. He's spotter
one of the guys
who has a couple of the funniest lines in the movie where he's just snarky back and forth with the guys. When the guy's like, "We're press," and he's like, "That explains why it's written on the side of your van."
Yes.
He's that guy.
And
so,
those guys had again, they had that really funny moment where they're like interviewing those two guys, and the one cracks a joke, which I won't repeat on here, but it's like, okay, give me more of these guys. Like this movie was constantly just showing you stuff and then not delivering on it or not giving you more of it.
Yeah. I did think one bit of good writing involving those two guys is they were with Tom Hardy's character at his end. They were sitting in a car, which is nothing. Like, it just kind of showed as they aged and as everybody was getting like younger and tougher around them.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't even go to this fight on their motorcycles because it was getting cold out. And then they go and sit in their car, and when the kid comes out and shoots Johnny, they're like, "What do we do?" And they freeze. They don't do anything. And
that was good.
Just kind of a call. It was kind of a callback to Kathy talked about half these guys are actually not tough.
Yep.
And they just like to hang out with the guys who are tough to make them feel tough. And when they lost their tough guy Johnny,
they didn't know what to do.
These and they're the two guys who just continue on to the gang because they're like
this is just what we do. Yes, that was good writing.
We're not branching out on our own. So that was a good moment.
I agree.
The guy who played Cockroach, what a weird character.
Super
Kept
weird.
talking about eating bugs.
Bugs, yeah.
Emery Cohen, and he was in The Place Beyond the Pines. He plays one of the sons in the movie. He plays I think he plays the son of Bradley Cooper in that movie.
Yeah. And
then he was also in the movie Brooklyn. He plays the guy that Saoirse Ronan marries in that movie from Brooklyn. And so he's one of those guys that's like, man, he was a guy who kind of had a moment for a bit where it looked like he might become kind of a known actor in movies like that. And then, here it is, didn't exactly take off the way that he probably hoped. And he's playing Cockroach as the 10th lead in this movie. Another guy who's kind of like that is the guy who played Cal, the guy who was from California originally, the mechanic. He's played by Boyd Halbrook. And Boyd is a guy who talked about having a moment a few years ago. He was in the movie Logan in 2017. It's one of the main villains as the mechanical arm. And then he starred in The Predator in 2018. And maybe that's why it didn't continue to take off, as The Predator didn't really work.
The Predator is terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was a guy that's like, okay, this guy Boyd Halbrook is kind of breaking into being a guy. And then, again, didn't take off the way that we thought. And a few years later, here he is playing like the 6th lead in this biker movie.
Yeah. So, and like you said, you do end up with a bunch of guys who maybe could have taken off, but then you just end up with a bunch of I know that face from somewhere. And I will say this too, to try and trend a little more positive. I don't think there was a bad performance in the movie. And I certainly wasn't trying to be down on Tom Hardy. It was just a whole lot of, good actors doing what was asked of them or doing what was written. Just, again, my overall theme of this is I just wanted more.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably the lesson of this one. We talk all the time about big swings and big misses, and this felt like a very
safe,
not a big swing. It felt like just a safe. It's like they were swinging for a single and they hit a single.
Yeah,
yeah. You're like, he definitely wasn't a home run, but I don't think they were swinging for a home run.
I don't think so either.
A nice, safe single.
Yeah, and it's funny too to go back to what you said earlier about the director. Like, he had wanted to be in this world and wanted to make this movie for a long time, but that didn't come across. And you kind of just left going, why did you want to be in this world? Because like I said, you didn't lean into the violence or the rise and fall, but you also didn't lean into the brotherhood. You didn't lean into this is why motorcycles are so cool, or this is why this lifestyle is so appealing. So just played it very safe.
Yeah, a little too much of everything, a little spread too thin.
Yep.
Like I said, I think probably trying to go for the most wide appeal possible. And in that, just didn't really grab anybody.
Nope.
So
And
yeah,
when you see a lot of movies like I do, and especially like you do, you're gonna have those, where they're not certainly not the best movie of the year, but they're not the worst movie of the year either. And you kind of just have those movies that are just there.
100%. All right, we do want to do something fun on this podcast because I feel like this podcast could use an injection of life and fun.
It
So
could, it
I
could.
texted you. I texted you yesterday,
You did?
and I said I want us to talk about on here. I want us to each do a Mount Rushmore of motorcycles in movies. And what I mean particularly by this is like just what's the coolest anybody's looked on a motorcycle
Oh yeah.
in a movie. So that it does involve the motorcycle looking cool, but like not
It has
just
to be.
I'm not a motorcycle person,
I,
so I wouldn't just see a motorcycle in a movie and be like that
that's a
motorcycle's
nice
cool.
bike.
Yeah, it's how somebody's gonna look on that motorcycle. And so yeah, we're each gonna give our four, and I bet there'll be at least one that we both have.
I bet so.
Because we've talked about this on the podcast before. It's a movie we went and saw in theaters together.
Oh yeah.
So that one is in Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Arnold Schwarzenegger on that. I don't even know if it's a Harley, but whatever sort of bike he's on, it is just. I think that's the top spot. I think that's the coolest anybody's ever looked on a motorcycle in a movie. Is Arnold in Terminator 2 on that motorcycle?
I think that's.
Did you have that one on yours?
Of course, I think that's the coolest anyone's ever looked in a movie. Period. Like he's on that motorcycle, he's twirling, like he's reloading that shotgun with one hand. He's chasing a semi. He's got his sunglasses on. Like nobody has ever looked cooler in a movie, motorcycle or not.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. Like just everything about it, the entire aesthetic.
Oh my gosh,
is
it's
perfect,
unreal.
An underrated thing that people probably don't think about is, in order to be on those big bikes, like those bikes are big and heavy, and you got to be kind of a bigger, stronger guy to like ride the big bikes. And Arnold just looks he's right for it because he's a big dude and
he's perfect.
It just like I said, everything about it's perfect. That's the top spot for sure.
Oh, 100%.
Now my next pick, I guarantee you're gonna have this guy on here. But what I actually had a hard time doing was picking which movie for this guy, and I chose maybe an unorthodox pick.
You got to be talking about Cruise.
I'm talking about Cruise.
Yeah.
And when it comes to Cruise, I'm actually going with Mission Impossible Rogue Nation.
Yeah.
Where he's doing the motorcycle chase, and it's a crotch rocket, not like a traditional chopper. But really that one, because I think that's the most I've ever felt like the speed of motorcycles caught on video. Like it felt dangerous. It's like, oh my gosh, they're going so fast. And if
probably
you,
because
falls, you're dead. Because Cruise actually does.
Cruise.
Cruise is probably going 100 miles per hour at least filming this. Yeah, so that's why I know Cruises look great on motorcycles in various movies and various Mission Impossible movies, and I imagine you'll probably pick a different one. But that's the one that I'm like, I always go to because it was such a good job of capturing the intensity and the speed on those motorcycles in that chase. Did you have a Cruise pick?
I did. I was just going to say real quick, if you want someone to capture intensity and speed, who better than Tom Cruise? Because,
absolutely.
I just played it safe, and I went with Tom Cruise, and I actually got real specific and went Top Gun Maverick, just because that's so satisfying in that movie when you see him back on that motorcycle, and you're just like, yeah, this is just like a comforting, like a comfort food or something. Like Pete, the Maverick, the Pete Mitchell character, back on his motorcycle, just like he was 30 years ago, and so that had to be on my Mount Rushmore.
I think you're 100% right. When he goes over and he takes the cover off of it, and it's like just a great.
It's a great
Goosebumps movie in movies.
Yeah.
And honestly, if I was just doing like the 4 actual top best, I probably would put that on there, but I think I didn't want to put 2 of the same person. And so I was like, I know I'm going to pick one of these Cruise ones. Because, again, you could have gone with multiple Mission Impossible installments.
Oh, definitely.
Because he's always hopping on motorcycles and riding around in there. But
always.
That's a great one. I imagine we're probably going to have different ones for our next 2. So I'll just share mine. One of them is a movie. I always say it's not even a great movie, but it's kind of the enduring image from that movie is Benjamin Button, Tom Cruise riding a motorcycle, because it's like Tom Cruise in like, I don't know, the 50s, just looking his most like handsome Tom Cruise-ish and riding an old school motorcycle. And I've never thought anybody looked cooler on a motorcycle than Did I say Tom Cruise?
You
Brad
did
Pitt.
say Tom Cruise.
I did
Yeah.
say Tom Cruise. I heard it after the fact. By the way, I can barely hear myself because I'm wearing noise canceling headphones,
Gotcha.
and I hear you, and so I like sometimes I say things and then it like in a second I kind of catch it.
That's all right. I knew what
Tom
you
Cruise,
meant.
Brad Pitt, and Benjamin
Yes.
Button
Yeah.
riding a motorcycle was just like the coolest I've ever thought anybody actually looked. Just effortlessly cool. And then my last one is, of course, Wild Hogs, Tim Allen. Not JK. That's not my last pick.
No
My
one
last
has
pick
ever
is-
been cooler.
I knew I was gonna make the Wild Hogs joke. I couldn't decide which character would be the funniest to say, and I
Right.
thought we'll go with Tim Allen.
Go with Tim Allen.
My last pick is definitely going to be a pick most people wouldn't make, and it might be biased because I just rewatched this. I'm going with The Matrix Reloaded and Trinity riding a crotch rocket on the highway chase, because if nothing else, the people who made The Matrix really knew how to make things look cool, and Trinity zooming around on that motorcycle in that highway chase, I thought was really cool. So that's my 5. I'm going to recap my 4, then I'll let you finish out yours.
Sure.
So I had Arnold in Terminator 2.
Yeah.
I had Tom Cruise in Rogue Nation. I had Brad Pitt in Benjamin Button, and I had Trinity, played by Carrie Ann Moss, in The Matrix Reloaded.
That is an awesome. That is an awesome scene, by the way. So I went with. So I'll read. I had Arnold, obviously number 1. Cruise in Top Gun Maverick. I went with Batman in The Dark Knight. Once the Batmobile is no longer operational, he kind of burst out of the Batmobile in like the Bat cycle or whatever you want to call it, and he just looks awesome. And he comes flying out of that alley like he's blown up those dumpsters to get him out of the way, and then the Joker says, "There's a Batman," and that's just awesome. And he just looks really cool. And the last pick, I just went ridiculous because this is just a personal favorite ridiculous movie of mine, and I'm going Stallone in Cobra. At the end of Cobra, he just takes off, like he kills like 300 bad guys and kills the main bad guy, and then him and his woman just hop on a motorcycle and they're like, "All right, we're out of here." So I love 80s ridiculousness, and if you're going to talk 80s ridiculousness, you got to talk Cobra. So there's my Mount Rushmore.
I love that you picked that, and I love that I know you, because I actually considered that one.
Yes.
And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to pick it, but I think there's a good chance that Andy will pick it.
Yeah.
And it will get covered. So that's a great choice. I thought about Batman in the Dark Knight, and the only reason I didn't is I was like, it almost feels like cheating, because of course the Bat cycle is like the coolest thing
I know
that's ever.
I know.
So I said, I'm so 100% okay that you picked it, but I was like, I'm going to rule out the Bat cycle in the Dark Knight. I'm also going to rule out the Light cycle in Tron, which is another just kind of cool.
That is cool.
Made up visual. But I wanted to shout out a movie that's even more cheesy 80s than Cobra. Obviously, I didn't pick this, but I just feel like I needed to shout out Brian Bosworth in Stone Cold, which is a movie I've seen too many times, I think, on like TBS or TNT.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, like, I haven't seen it in probably 25 years. I think I still have a soft spot for it.
Dude.
Like, I want to go back and watch it.
It's incredible. It's like,
I'm so glad to hear you say that.
It's like if someone made Cobra, but they're like, but it's just not near as good or as well acted as Cobra.
Yeah, that's basically right. I was curious. I knew I wasn't going to pick this one. I didn't know how much you would go into, like, movie historian mode. Obviously, neither of us picked anything from Easy Rider, which is like the most famous motorcycle movie.
Yeah,
and that was one of the movies that I watched when I was in a stage of like, I got to go back and watch classics.
Yes,
and I watched, and I couldn't even make it all the way through, and I was like, I just don't. This is not for me. I don't get it. This movie it's just nothing. They're just literally doing nothing.
That movie was made, in a specific time for a specific generation, and we are not in either one of those.
No.
Yeah.
And so I know a lot of film people are going to, might listen to this and go, can't believe you did top 4. 2 of you did top 4 motorcycles in movies, and you didn't pick Easy Rider, but that's just the way it goes sometimes.
It is the way it goes. That was a great idea on your part, by the way, and I had a ton of fun kind of going through what I wanted my Mount Rushmore to be.
I'm glad that you like it. Every time I have an idea and you say great idea, I'm like, thank goodness, because I don't want to.
I love your ideas, and I especially love like these fun, like it. I love an opportunity where like I take everything you present to me seriously, but I love an opportunity where it's like, here's a chance where I could talk about Cobra. Maybe we just need to do a Cobra podcast,
We might have to at some point. Maybe what we're gonna have to do is start doing like watch alongs or something.
dude.
You know,
Stone Cold would be
we
a great
stream.
watch along.
Oh man, it would. I
Yeah,
I would have so much fun with that. I'm sure it's absolutely terrible, but
it's
uh,
so bad.
but hopefully in like the bad cheesy fun that's good to watch
Oh yeah,
along
it's
and
fun.
comment on.
Or it'd be
So
really fun to do like a watch along with that, but just be like serious movie guys and be like, Brian Bosworth really got screwed out of an Oscar nomination for this movie. I mean, the work he is doing here is just
his mullet
unbelievable.
alone.
Oh my gosh, that's an amazing movie.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to do to wrap up the Bike Riders is just talk
Hmm.
about it had a $40 million budget. Uh, all I've been able to find is opening night, Friday night, it made about 4 million.
10
So
million, 10 million opening weekend in the U.S.
10 million opening weekend. So
Yeah,
we'll
eh.
see if it has any legs. I doubt it.
I don't
Especially
think
with
this
some of
movie.
them.
I don't think this
Yeah,
movie's gonna have legs. I just really don't.
I don't think so either. Especially again the lack of buzz so far, and then there's big releases ahead that I
There
think are
are.
going to drown it out.
Dude, there's like 4 movies I want to go see next weekend, but one of them's Jaws. So to be fair, that's not a new release, but
No, but it's worth everybody going to see.
it is. Go see it. So I do want to ask you a quick question before we wrap up. What
Mhm.
what do you want to see next from Austin Butler? Like, because I knew
I
we'd talk about Austin
Yeah,
Butler and his performance. Like, what role does he need to pick? Do you think?
I think whatever he picks, I want it to be a part where I want him to do a leading man part where he actually has a lot of dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm thinking of even when he did Elvis, was he the leading character in that movie? Like, yes, and that's an Elvis movie, but it was weirdly like a Tom Hanks movie doing his
Mm-hmm.
weird thing, and
Yeah.
Elvis was like a secondary character.
Yeah.
I want to see Austin Butler just be the lead. And don't get me wrong, I love supporting character Austin Butler, like we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But I want him to be the lead character just because I want to see him have to do more. I think
Yeah.
he is an interesting actor, and I want to see him do dialogue, and I want to see him, like really, really have people connect to him on a human level. Like not just I look cool, but just
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to actually show off my acting ability and ability to communicate. So yeah, don't even do like an action movie. Do like a real, I don't know, drama or something,
Mm-hmm.
and be the
Yeah,
leading
I
guy
agree.
and have a lot of dialogue.
Yep, I agree completely.
Yeah. Now, what if I threw that same question to you of what should Tom Hardy do? Because it feels like a minute since Tom Hardy's really been at the peak of his powers.
It does. Well, unfortunately, the next thing Tom Hardy's doing is Venom 3, which I
But
just
let's skip over that one.
let's skip over that for sure. He is so hard to pin down because he is, like we talked about, he has got the look, he's got the charisma. You definitely buy him as a tough guy. Like he's got that like little bit of danger to him. Like, man, this guy could just explode at any moment and just beat my face into a pulp. He's got that. I think for someone like Hardy, what does he do next? I mean, does he? It's like there's on one hand, it's like, man, just go back to Nolan. Like go back and be in the next Nolan movie. Like you're great and you're great in Inception's what, really put the spotlight on him. Um, he was of course Bane in Dark Knight Rises, and I thought he was really good, really captivating in Dunkirk. So part of me thinks that. Man, I don't know. Tom Hardy's got like a weirdness to him, also, like we talked about. Go with our guy Yorgos, maybe. Do it. Be in his next movie. Like find someone who can, tap into that weirdness, and maybe he just needs to fully embrace that. I don't know. He's hard to pin down because he obviously doesn't want to just do the conventional. Like I remember he tried to do some kind of terrible rom-com with Chris Pine. Do you remember that where they were like spies?
Yeah.
And that just didn't work at all. So he's a tough one. I think just keep working with good, interesting directors and maybe just lean into your weirdness. I don't know. Or try and do a movie where you just talk in a normal voice. See how that goes for you.
Yeah, I thought about having us do for this episode a Mount Rushmore of Tom Hardy movies,
Mm-hmm.
but as I was looking at it, I was like, he really doesn't have as many hits in my
As
book
you might think.
as I would
Yeah.
like. Yeah, like,
Mm-hmm.
is there enough to have a good Mount Rushmore? Yes, but I really like a
Yes.
guy who's got at least 8 good options, so you're having to
Mm-hmm.
really work to narrow it
He's
down.
more
And
in
with him,
what,
it's
like
like,
4 or 5 options.
yeah, like
Yeah.
when I really look at it. So,
I can tell you
uh,
what I don't want him to do ever again is a Venom movie. That just feels like such a waste of Tom Hardy to me. I just don't like the Venom movies. And I have
yeah,
zero interest in this new one.
yeah, me either.
Yeah.
Oh, well, next week, we haven't decided 100% what we're doing. There's a couple of movies coming out that could be interesting. There's A Quiet Place Day One, which thank goodness we've talked about
I'm
this
so
before.
happy that's coming out.
Yeah,
Because
just no more trailers.
oh my gosh. I saw that trailer twice this weekend because I had to go twice to try and see Bikeriders.
Yeah, so that one will be done. By the way, interesting tidbit I didn't share is that Jeff Nichols, who did Bikeriders, dropped out of doing A Quiet Place Day One to do the Bikeriders.
Yeah.
Somebody else took that over. So that's an interesting sliding doors thing.
It is. It is.
Be interested to see if A Quiet Place Day One is a huge success. Jeff Nichols would probably never come out and say, "Well, I made the wrong decision and regret that."
Right.
But anyways,
we'll see. I'll be so glad I never have to see that trailer again.
Yeah, and then Kinds of Kindness is supposed to release wide next weekend, but I honestly have not seen the showtime for it anywhere. And I can pull up my local theater and see like the other movies that are coming out. I can see A Quiet Place Day One. I can see Horizon Part One and some other things, and it doesn't say anything about Kinds of Kindness. And I'm like, I'm really worried that this movie is not going to release for us to see, or for some reason. But the way it has been promoted and advertised, you would think it's going to get a really wide release and be everywhere.
So I was just reading before I came over here. It had even though it only played in a small amount of theaters, it had a really high per screen average. So I hope that's a good sign. Yeah. So in a perfect world, next weekend I would like to see Quiet Place, Horizon, Jaws, and Kinds of Kindness. Now I don't know if that's going to happen or not. That's ambitious on my part.
It is the end of the month, and so we will, I think, likely just kind of talk through a bunch of movies that we've seen over the past month or so that we haven't had a chance to talk about. I do want to. You said it before. We're going to talk about In a Violent Nature.
Dude, you have no idea how bad I want to talk about that movie with you.
I want to talk about Hitman, the Richard Linklater movie. I finally was able to watch.
You watched it?
And so we got a few things we want to talk about, and then it's also we're officially halfway through the year, and I'm going to update my top 5 of the year so far rankings.
I'll do the same.
If you want to also do the same,
I will do that.
So, some fun things to look forward to and discussing next week.
Can I put Stone Cold on my best of 2024 list? Is that allowed?
Only if you watch it in 2024.
Okay. I'll try and see what I can do.
It would be fun if we counted just any movie you watch in the calendar year. You would have Jaws on your top 5.
It's every year,
because every year you're going to catch it in theater.
I could do a top 5 just from the old movies I've seen in theaters this year.
It may be a really good top 5.
Dude, I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark last week, and going to see Jaws this week. I've seen Alien, The Godfather,
Terminator 2.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I mean, you're really talking like all-time top 5s.
Oh, literally, yeah, literally a top 5. So yeah, so it should be one way or another. We've got a lot of movies to talk about next week, and I'm interested to hear my own list. I need to go through all the movies I've seen and kind of recalibrate my list a little bit. So should be exciting.
Absolutely. And one more time, reminder to everybody: follow us on our Facebook page, on Instagram, Twitter, Threads. Be interactive. We want to hear your thoughts. Let us know what the best thing is you've seen so far this year.
You do not have to agree with us.
Yeah, let us know what you think is the coolest that somebody's looked on a motorcycle in a movie. Let us know, your thoughts on any of these movies that we haven't talked about. Be part of the conversation.
Please do. We love movie conversation. That's why we do this.
Absolutely. And so hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation this week about the Bikeriders. Give us some feedback about it. And we will see you guys next week.
See you next week.